Now, let's move on, though, to the next thing that we were going to talk about, which is the Baltimore Orioles. I wrote here they're flying under the radar a little bit. The Birds have been really good this season. They're getting overshadowed by some other teams across the league. But the driving question here is, are the Orioles a bona fide playoff team at this point? Because they have the second best record in the American League. That's something that is not getting a lot of talk. The Rays getting a lot of hype for how well they've been playing. Right behind the Tampa Bay Rays are the Baltimore Orioles, second in the AL East, second in the American League, one of the best records in all of baseball.
The short answer to the question for me is no. They're not a bona fide playoff team at this point. They do not have a qualified starter with an ERA below 3, which is Tyler Wells is the only one at a 3, and everyone else is a 4.4 or above. And so they've been kind of carried by their offense a little bit, and their bullpen. Yenier Cano has yet to allow a run through 19 innings pitched, and Felix Bautista has been just as dominant as he was last year with that splitter. He's a 1-something ERA right now, and that's where the successes come from. I think they were 8-4 in one-run games, and the offense has been kind of carrying them. 5.13 runs scored per game compared to 4.26 runs allowed. So the run differential isn't great for a team that I mentioned has the second best record in all of Major League Baseball. And so I think going forward, the answer to your question is no as it being a bona fide playoff team. Not saying they're not going to be a playoff team. I think you look around the rest of the American League, there's definitely a case there. If the Rangers and Astros, whoever wins that division, feel like it's still going to be the Astros, and the Rangers are really going to be the only other team now, it looks like, to compete for that third wild card. You figure you'll have another one from the AL East, or maybe even two, and then one more around. It's not going to be from the Central, it looks like. So definitely still could be a playoff team from here, but bona fide playoff team and kind of a lock, I don't think so.
Yeah, the Orioles are a team that I thought they were going to take a step back this season. And I kind of look up at the standings, and everyone's talking about the Rays. There you see the Orioles. They're right up there. And that was surprising to me. And I do believe that I was probably a little bit harsh on the Orioles. I was expecting some form of regression, but I think I was expecting a little bit too harsh of regression, and I wasn't accounting for the amount of growth that you could see from some of these players as well. They have a bunch of guys, I believe it's 5 right here, all above a 110 WRC plus, in Cedric Mullins, Adley Rutschman, Jorge Mateo, Anthony Santander, and Austin Hayes. Some of these guys I was higher on than others. I was high on Santander, obviously high on Adley Rutschman. Jorge Mateo is a guy that we weren't really expecting to break out this early in the season. But you mentioned it with the pitching, and that was the part that I think I was the harshest on for the Orioles, because the starting pitching wasn't good last year, yet somehow they went on this ridiculous path down the stretch. It hasn't been good this year. They are winning games, but I do think it tempers a bit. So I'm going to follow what you said, and I'm pretty much in agreement that I don't think they're a lock. I don't think they're going to be the second best team in the American League. I do think, though, they can and at this point probably will make the playoffs. It'll be as one of the lower wildcard teams, probably second or third wild card. I don't think they will win the American League East. I don't think that they're going to finish second in all of the league or all of the American League in record. But I do think that at this point in the season, I have seen enough from the Orioles where I feel like I was a little bit too harsh on them in the preseason. I do think they can make the playoffs, which is not what I had them in my preseason record predictions.
Yeah, I was right there with you. They were my first team missing out. I went bold and had the Angels making the playoffs. So joke's on me for believing in the Angels again. And so we'll see. Like I mentioned, it looks like it's going to be a battle between them and Rangers, or maybe even Astros if the Rangers can keep playing well. I might have to talk about them in a separate video soon. But like we're saying, offense has been great. Pitching, not as much. Bullpen's been good. See how it goes over the course of 162. But would love to see the Orioles in the playoffs, and we think they can be there.
Yeah, maybe one of the pitchers breaks out. They've got Grayson Rodriguez in the Major League Baseball. Hasn't clicked yet, but at this point, with a prospect that big, it could just take one start where he snaps and goes on a crazy run. You have Kyle Gibson, who's reliable. He's never going to be amazing, but it just, if they can figure it out, maybe if they're willing to, they can add at the trade deadline. That would really make me start to believe in the Orioles, because they had the opposite effect last year where they were in the pennant race and sold some pieces. And they made some good trades. I believe that's how they got Yenier Cano, the reliever who's having such a good year for them. But if they go out and buy at the deadline, maybe add another reliever, maybe add a starting pitcher that you can add. I'm not sure who's going to be available, but if the Orioles will stomach the idea that they have to go out and spend and try and get some of these future players, I think that could help them down the stretch to combat I think the regression that we are going to see a little bit in this season, because it's hard to win when you're playing at such a razor-thin margin every single game with starting pitching that's not very reliable.
They are definitely, I think, one front-end starting pitcher away from being kind of a real contender, like a lock for a playoff team, whether that comes from Grayson Rodriguez, who settles in and kind of looks to be the prospect and the major league player we thought he would be, or it comes at the trade deadline. Still to see. Feel like that's what's missing for the Orioles team, whether it be this year, the trade deadline, someone from within, or whether they go try and spend in this offseason. We'll see what happens, but I think that's where the Orioles are still lacking, and I think it'll come back to bite them a little bit if they don't address it.
Oh, well, let us know down in the comment section. Who should the Orioles add? And maybe are there players on the team you believe in to step it up? I mean, we haven't even seen the best out of Gunnar Henderson yet that we're expecting. So we'll see. They've got a lot of prospects that they could move or they could bring up to try and make an impact. But let us know down in the comment section. Who do you want to see in orange pitching for the Orioles? Maybe in October. We talked with Jack at Daily Dose of Baseball who wanted Corbin Burns. So we'll see. Who's the option that you think the Orioles should go with?
I mean, Corbin Burns would be amazing, but it looks like the Brewers might not be in a position to sell. I don't know it really for the Orioles, and it's going to be still so much to see who's going to be available at the deadline. A lot of teams are kind of in contention still. There's not a lot of teams who have fallen behind who have pieces to sell, like the A's and the White Sox. Maybe you could see like Lucas Giolito. I could see that potentially being for the Orioles, who another guy who maybe is not a huge front end starter that kind of thought he would be a few years ago. But I think that could be a player that would look good for the Orioles and boost their rotation a bit.
We already talked about Lance Lynn. Maybe he picks it up a little bit, but wants out of Chicago if he doesn't like the poor defense playing behind him. Or we've already seen people think Tim Anderson may have said, "I hate this place" this weekend about the White Sox. So I called it preseason saying I think the White Sox trade away some pieces. They're a team with possibility, and we'll see how it goes for teams like the A's or the Marlins or the Brewers, who are kind of always in that conversation. But we'll see as the season goes on, but let us know what you think the Orioles can and will do down the stretch of the MLB season.
Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you like what you saw, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and as well as hit that notification bell. If you want to see more content from our show, check any of the videos around me or follow our socials for more content from Double Play.